Lesley Stahl did a very good job in her 60-minute sit-down with Donald Trump. I remember interviewing her during the campaign, and she said she didn't see any tilt by the press against Trump and in favor of Hillary Clinton. But I must say she's been doing this a long time, and she has a way of asking hard questions without seeming confrontational, covered a lot of ground, made a lot of news. What was most striking in watching the show, which went on, for nearly an hour, taking away the commercials, was the sober, perhaps somewhat subdued tone of the president-elect. I've interviewed him a half dozen times during this campaign and watched him in endless, countless, hundreds, thousands of interviews on television, all kinds of outlets. And, he can be pretty aggressive, pretty tough, pretty bombastic. And I think he deliberately chose to kind of lower the temperature, both in policy terms and in terms of his demeanor. Because, you're sitting there watching and thinking, 6 days ago, nobody in the media at least, thought this guy was going to be the next president of the United States. And that to some extent, the weight of the office and now suddenly getting calls from foreign leaders and all of that had to have an effect, as it does on every man who wins the presidency, to make you turn more serious and also to realize that every word you say sends a signal around the world, can send shockwaves around the world. And I think that's why we saw the more subdued Donald Trump. So when it came to abortion, Donald Trump didn't want to say, I want Roe v. Wade overturned. He said he would appoint pro-life judges to the Supreme Court, that eventually there might be a ruling that would return it to the states, but he didn't quite embrace the position that people who are pro-choice are hoping would not happen. Really striking on same-sex marriage, Trump just said, look, it's a settled matter. The Supreme Court has ruled, and I'm fine with it. I wasn't surprised because when I interviewed Trump soon after the Supreme Court ruling in 2015, he clearly didn't want to make an issue out of it. He's not somebody who has run against gay rights or against gays. I think he has a lot of friends in New York who are gay and so forth. He's still going to build the wall. Some of it may be offense, he told Lesley Stahl. He's going to deport the criminals, the people who are gang members or drug dealers among the 11 million or so illegal immigrants living in this country. He kind of sidestepped, as he did in the latter stages of the campaign, the earlier idea that we just have mass deportations of all 11 million. And then there was the question of Twitter. And this was fascinating because Trump obviously has weaponized Twitter. He used it to go after the press, news organizations, journalists, his political enemies, Marco, Jeb, the whole gang, during the campaign. And he said, it gave him a way of sort of fighting back against being outspent and the negative coverage. But now he says when he's president, he will be very restrained, to use the president-elect's words, on Twitter, if he uses it at all. But then after he tapes the session with Lesley Stahl, he uncorks a series of tweets against the New York Times, failing New York Times, losing thousands of subscribers after the election. The Times says that is not true. In fact, it's been gaining subscribers since last Tuesday, but also going after the paper for being unfair in its treatment to him. So which Donald Trump will become president, the guy who likes to be rather aggressive, shall we say, on Twitter, or the man who will be more restrained? I think Trump himself is still figuring that out. It was one phrase that struck me when Trump said to Lesley Stahl, the press portrayed me as a bit of a wild man and that he doesn't see himself that way. Well, that image, fairly or unfairly, helped get him elected. But it's very different to govern than to campaign. Every single president-elect faces this. We're all waiting to see. We're looking for the signals through appointments and policy pronouncements and just body language. What kind of president Donald Trump will turn out to be?